If you want to win a championship right now, you don't dump your 29-year-old prime superstar for a battered 36-year-old veteran. But Boston just did. Jaylen Brown is headed to the 76ers. The haul? Paul George, a structured 2028 first-round pick, an unprotected 2031 first, and 2 seconds. It's a sickening contradiction. One week, Brad Stevens looks into the cameras and calls Brown a big part of us. Days later, an openly frustrated Brown is out the door. So are the Celtics trying to win now, pinch pennies, or are they fatally paralyzed trying to do both? Stick around. I'm going to show you exactly why this front office got greedy, juggled 3 different agendas, and completely fumbled the bag. Trading prime production for a walking risk.
Brown goes to work, finds an open again.
Basketball, first and foremost, is a ruthless game of father time. Jaylen Brown walks into the 2025-26 season at 29 years old. What he did last year wasn't just a great statistical season. It was a deafening statement that he could be the undisputed backbone of a title contender. When Jason Tatum tore his Achilles, Brown dragged this team through 71 games, finishing the regular season with 28.7 points, 6.9 rebounds, and 5.1 assists. He finished 6th in the MVP race. He secured his spot on the All-NBA second team. Meanwhile, Tatum didn't drag himself back onto the hardwood until March 6, 2026, a grueling 10 months post-injury. And right after that heartbreaking Game 7 loss to Philadelphia, Tatum bitterly admitted he was only playing at 80–85% capacity. The truth is right there on the tape. Boston didn't survive the bulk of last season on the lingering aura of Jason Tatum. They stayed afloat because of Jaylen Brown's absurd production, sheer force, and ironman durability.
Here defensively, tries to stay in front. Brown and
Now let's flip the coin and look at Paul George. An all-time great name? Undeniable. A Hall of Very Great resume? Absolutely. But listen to me closely. The NBA does not pay you for nostalgic highlight reels. A legitimate title contender cannot build a championship dream on the imaginary, healthy version of a fading star. George is 36. In the 2025-26 season, he laced them up for a grand total of 37 games, averaging 17.3 points, 5.3 rebounds, and 3.6 assists. The year before that, he played exactly 41 games before his knee and adductor shut him down. Added up, across 2 seasons in Philly, George limped onto the court exactly 78 times. In July 2025, he went under the knife for a left knee arthroscopy after a season where his body completely broke down. Please do not blindly defend this with the tired narrative that a healthy Paul George fits better next to Tatum than Brown. I am not arguing the whiteboard X's and O's. If George is healthy, if he logs 70 games, if he keeps his defensive legs beneath him, sure, he's a pristine wing complement. But Boston didn't buy the ideal Paul George. They bought the full 2026 reality package. Advanced age, surgically repaired knees, fragile durability, and the grim reality that his absolute best now only flashes in short bursts. Boston didn't upgrade their roster. They just took a knife to their own championship timeline, trading away a glowing treasure at the peak of his powers for a faded, aging, wildly risky gamble. The salary cap illusion.
the Mavericks now 2 for 11. Brown goes right at Josh Green. Running layup is good.
In the modern NBA, every shocking blockbuster is perfectly camouflaged in front office buzzwords. The new CBA, the luxury tax, the second apron, and long-term sustainability. Those pressures are real, but financial desperation only buys you sympathy if it clears a concrete path for the future. Instead, Boston shipped out Brown just to swallow a muddy, convoluted roster structure. Brown had 3 years left on that Supermax extension he inked back in 2023. But what about George? he is still devouring $54.1 million in base salary for the 2026-27 season, heavily padded with a 2027-28 player option and a massive 15% trade bonus. Let's call it what it is. Boston might have scratched off a few surface-level financial burdens, but calling this a streamlined cap-clearing move is a total joke.
There goes JB again, against the Rook, finds the cutter!
The picture gets even uglier when you zoom out and look at the context. Right on the edge of free agency, the Celtics front office pulled off some cap gymnastics to duck below the luxury tax threshold. That magic trick unlocked their $15 million non-taxpayer mid-level exception while preserving a massive $27.7 million trade exception. Translation: Boston already had the oxygen tanks ready. They had breathing room. They didn't need to sacrifice Jaylen Brown at the altar just to take on another bloated contract. I agree the Celtics had to make sacrifices to survive under this draconian new CBA, but here are the rules of the game. If you ruthlessly execute a 29-year-old homegrown franchise pillar, you better get back absolute current firepower or absolute future financial freedom. Boston got washed on both fronts. What about that draft capital? Sure, an unprotected 2031 first-rounder from Philly is a literal gold mine, and that structured 2028 pick smells like real value. But that is equity tucked away for a distant, foggy future. The price they paid was their blazing, real-time firepower right now. NBA history is littered with fallen empires that tried to keep one foot in the present and one foot reaching for the future. It's no man's land. And when actual basketball takes a backseat to blind asset calculation, the narrative instantly spirals out of control. Handing a bazooka to your biggest rival.
7 assists and 19 points. Jaylen Brown! Caught him!
There are trades that make you weaker. Then, there are trades so incredibly foolish, they essentially hand the enemy the exact weapon they need to back you into a corner. This deal is exactly that. Philadelphia isn't just a division rival, they're the living nightmare that just booted Boston out of the 2026 first round with a historic 3-1 series comeback. In that fateful Game 7, Tatum sat on the bench helpless, his legs not ready, while Brown went on an absolute tear, dropping 33 points in a desperate losing effort to save the season. And yet, just 2 months later, Boston gift-wrapped that exact warrior and tossed him straight to the team that just made them bleed. In terms of Eastern Conference geopolitics, this is a deafening siren.
The loose ball, one man to beat. What? Oh, look at...
Tactically, it's a living disaster. Brown is now going to stride onto the court alongside Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and rookie sensation VJ Edgecombe. Any basketball brain with a pulse can read Philly's lethal new formula. Maxey shreds the perimeter with blinding speed. Embiid crushes every defensive scheme with his half-court gravity. And Brown, he violently plugs the exact fatal flaw Philly has been desperate to fix in bloody playoff series. Downhill physical force from the wing, point of attack defensive granite, and the pure killer instinct to go get a bucket when the game devolves into a slugfest. Apologists will argue Boston took the pain to cut their losses, but a sharp front office knows how to cut losses without running a weapons forge for the neighbors next door. Boston just hand-delivered a two-way monster at his absolute apex right across enemy lines. Sending Brown to the exact rival that just vanquished you, all for a 36-year-old win in some draft picks, is an insult to basketball intelligence. If I have to pull out a red pen and grade this trade, it's a D+, a D-, or straight up an F. When every seasoned voice in the league is pointing at the exact same blind spot, that the Celtics just pulled out their own fangs and handed the Sixers a crowbar, it's no longer a hot take. It is a certified clinical diagnosis. The fracture of this empire.
He's doubled. 1 second left. Brown got it!
The ultimate failure of this blockbuster doesn't live in the dry math of a box score or a cap sheet. It lives in the absurd power dynamic Boston just broadcasted to the world and threw directly into their own locker room. The timeline exposes everything. On June 24, Stevens loudly reassured everyone that Brown was a big part of us. On June 25, ESPN ripped the mask off, leaking that the Celtics were still hunting a Brown trade after whiffing on the Giannis sweepstakes. By June 29, the Boston Globe dropped the final bomb. Brown had grown frustrated to the breaking point with how the organization handled his summer, especially after he literally carried them to 56 wins while Tatum rehabbed. Less than 72 hours later, Boston closed the deal with Philly. When sweet media talk violently clashes with backroom actions, you don't just shatter a brotherhood, you shatter the core credibility of an entire franchise.
5 seconds left in the half. Upstairs. Right out on the chin.
Of course, the NBA is a cutthroat business. No one is romanticizing loyalty. Danny Ainge cold-bloodedly kicked Isaiah Thomas to the curb. Masai Ujiri didn't blink when he shipped out DeMar DeRozan. Ruthless decisions are the tax you pay for the banners hanging in the rafters. But ruthlessness only earns respect when it is surgically precise. Boston's problem isn't that they pulled the trigger. Their problem is they pulled the trigger in a blind panic. They missed out on Giannis, watched Brown put up a brilliant season, let Stevens make public promises, and then scrambled for a return package that the rest of the league is mocking as baffling and a sheer panic move. There is a massive, canyon-sized gap between an organization proactively cutting ties to get stronger and a chaotic front office reacting wildly when Plan A goes up in smoke.
With 7 assists and 19 points. Jaylen Brown!
Jaylen Brown is no rookie. He was the number 3 overall pick in 2016. He is the homegrown blood in their veins. He is the 2024 Finals MVP. He's the guy who dragged Tatum through the mud to finally touch the mountaintop. After they were eliminated, an emotional Brown called the 2025-26 run the favorite year of my basketball career. The agonizing part is that Boston callously threw away a warrior who never publicly demanded out, a guy who just proved he could put the entire franchise on his back through a hurricane. Empires don't collapse just because they lose a single player. Empires crack when they lose their identity. Are you the all-in team desperate to win a ring with Tatum? Are you tearing it down to dodge the luxury tax? Or are you the fool standing at the crossroads, holding a torn map, staring at a new horizon while your legs shake too hard to take a step?
To Brown. Jaylen Brown goes right past Doncic and the slam.
To wrap it all up, the Celtics didn't fail because they had the guts to trade Jaylen Brown. They failed because they traded him at the absolute wrong time, absorbed the wrong kind of risk, and operated from a completely fractured motive. George isn't as reliable as Brown right now, so this isn't a win-now move. George's contract is still a massive anchor, so this isn't a brilliant cost-saving maneuver. And feeding your brightest star to your most direct threat completely strips you of the right to call this a genius rebuild. By trying to do all three, Boston completely lost their compass. If you love the kind of hoops talk that digs deep into front office power, cap sheets, and legacy, keep riding with the hoops ledger from Cole Sterling, because the best NBA dramas never start on the scoreboard. They start with the decisions that shatter empires.